Oh, we're so glad to see your smiling faces. Thank you for joining us for the last session of today. I'm Jennifer Kajiyama Tinkham. I get to teach here at BYU Hawaii and part of the Religious Freedom and Human Dignity Initiative. I'm very honored today to moderate this very important session on faith-based civil society programs that promote peacemaking. So faith communities have long been at the heart of efforts to heal conflicts, uphold human dignity, and build bridges with divided peoples. And today we're privileged to hear from 4 remarkable leaders who embody this work through their interfaith collaboration on peace education and grassroots civil society programs across the globe. First, I would like to welcome Muhammad Hafiz, a facilitator with the Lemina Institute in Indonesia. He collaborates with the Center for Religious and Cross-Cultural Literacy and works to promote democratic values and freedom of religion or belief, often in the context marked by religious diversity. Next, we are honored to have Dr. Aldrin M. Penamora, Executive Director of the Justice, Peace, and Reconciliation Commissions of the Philippines Council of Evangelical Churches. He also leads the Center for the Study of Christian-Muslim Relations and has been a tireless advocate for peace building in Mindanao and beyond. Joining us next is Mr. Micah, a leader with the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network. Micah's work builds trust between diverse faith communities, encouraging collaboration across religious boundaries for the sake of mutual understanding and common good. And finally, we are pleased to welcome David and Judy Kirkham, who serve as executive directors of the Geneva Office for Human Rights Education. Their work integrates diplomacy, educational outreach, and advocacy for religious freedom across the globe. So we'll begin with our first speaker, Mr. Muhammad Hafiz.
Aloha. Good afternoon, everybody. I thank you for BYU and Lemina Institute for this opportunity. Fortunately, Lemina or Mr. Matthews invite me now to share about promoting peacemaking because my background as a human rights activist, mostly working with the freedom of religion or belief perspective. Sometimes in Indonesia we have like a rivalry between peacemaker activists and human rights activists because of differences of approach, how we can treat the situation, how we can look case of violation of human rights, including also the attack to minorities like Ahmadiyya, Shia, and etc. So after the process, after discussion with the Lemina, with all of peoples, I think there are like a shifting perspective how Indonesian activists see the conflict of religion is not only about how victim should be or the perpetrator should be bring to the court, to the law, but also how we can also make sure that victim can get remedies from the process of violation. So what I share actually based on my experience since I joined with the human rights activism, including also for freedom of religion. I repeat the number of Indonesian population, mostly from Muslim majority population. I just want to share about to you about to some extent Indonesia Islam considered by Indonesian population as important thing in their daily life. Because in our Islamic perspective we have like a doctrine. Islam is a comprehensive, influencing all of our life, and so that all of our act, it should be based on the Islamic perspective, Islamic teaching. One of the consequences is not easy for us, for the activists, for the faith, interfaith activists, human rights activists, or even for the religious leaders to convince our population to accept the new ideas or new concept about the human right, about tolerance, about the foreign or stranger, a strange perspective, including freedom of religion. Even though I think Indonesia has blessed with the moderate social life since long ago, both culture and religion. So that's become like a basic for us to how we can convince our population that Indonesia, based on that social political foundation. Yeah. We have some challenges that I can share. This is only one of the things that we consider as a challenge. In 25, Indonesia Ulama Council, as you know, MUI, there are a lot of perspective in MUI because MUI is like, MUI is not a state organization, not state institution, but sometimes a state apparatus follow MUI as like a legitimate institution to decide religiosity aspect. And so that previously my colleague, my friend from Indonesia, Pak Farid, said that MUI currently is more moderate and tolerant. Yeah, because there are changing within the MUI. But in 2005, actually MUI issued a fatwa about pluralism, liberalism, and religious secularism as a result of National Congress MUI in 2005. Fatwa state that pluralism, secularism, and religious liberalism are ideologies that contradict the teaching of Islam, and so that it is haram. Haram is forbidden for Muslim to follow it. So this is very crucial for us among the activists of tolerance, interfaith, and pluralism. How we can convince our population in some time MUI, the authoritative or sometimes authoritarian council decided that pluralism is a haram or forbidden for the Muslim population. Regardless the origin of the fatwa, because you know that there were a liberal Islam network, we call Jaringan Islam Liberal, is very familiar in Indonesia and also abroad. Ulil Absar Abdallah, as a chairperson of Liberal Islam Network, that become a trigger, MUI issued this fatwa. Yeah, this fatwa is become like a big challenge for us because sometimes MUI fatwas have more impact than what is written, such as fatwa on Ahmadiyah. So if you see the cases of violation of freedom of religion in Indonesia since in 2008, 9, 10, 11, it's because the fatwa on the prohibition of fatwa from MUI about Ahmadiyah and prohibition for the dissemination of Ahmadiyah teaching among Indonesian population that become like a trigger for vigilante and state apparatus to more or increase their own effort to discriminate or even violence against minorities. So even though the written fatwa is not really, make sure that all of violence against Ahmadiyya is forbidden, is not comply with the Islamic teaching. But in the fact, vigilante group or even government interpret a fatwa to as a legitimate decision to make discrimination, to create violence against Ahmadiyya. So resistant human rights values also raised in some region or areas in Indonesia, like previously, like in Aceh, for instance. We cannot use the term human right in Aceh because you will say it as kafir. Kafir is you are not part of Islam, even though you are a Muslim, you are teaching Islamic in Islamic school, but if you use a concept of human right, you will be not accepted in Aceh or some areas in Indonesia. So that's the challenge that we consider must be addressed by the civil society, including also for tolerant activists. So based on the Indonesian experience, the dichotomic perspective on the particularity and universality of human rights, including freedom of religion, is not effective to be used to bridge an existing gap in population. As you know, if you read the book of Abdullah An-Naim, the first book, Sharia Deconstruction, and you can compare with the latest book of Abdullah An-Naim about the secular state, there are a distinction perspective in the first step of Abdullah An-Naim perspective on Islam and human rights, and the latest. So our pragmatic position actually choose to combine or negotiate both of perspective, Islam and human rights. Because using dichotomic perspective, particularity and universality of human rights and Islam, it is not effective for us in the term of advocacy, in the term of to promote peace and freedom of religion. Using Islamic teaching to advocate religious freedom and harmony is one of the way that must be started and tried. So if you also read the book of Tore Lindholm and Professor Durham, about in the facilitating of freedom of religion, how the dilemma of religious community to advocate the freedom of religion based on the teaching of the religious issues, and also come from the material of freedom of religion that not recognized within the religious institution, as strange perspectives, strange issues that cannot be accepted by the religious community. So that, if I can giving a short conclusion, when I met Lemina Institute to start discussion about the cross-cultural religious literacy, and also some practices that we have in Indonesia, honestly, I met with Indonesian government, especially in Lombok, to negotiate about Ahmadiyya with some conservative perspective about Ahmadiyya from the local government, and also we work also in East Java, in Jawa Timur. If you also heard about Sampang case, Syiah in Sampang in East Java, we also discuss with the local government, and we only have one choice: how we can bring Islamic perspective to moderate the discussion between minority group and local government. Because if we use a human rights perspective, freedom of religion, sometimes it's not really effective to convince them about how a government can protect minorities. So cross-cultural religious literacy actually giving us a framework how we can convince our people, our society, about the importance of tolerance, interfaith dialogues among communities with their own religious teaching. So that's a starting point that I want to share to you. And for the next, my presentation actually mostly about our program. The name of the program conducted or organized by Kalijaga Institute for Justice, same university with Ibu Inaya, and also Lemina Institute, and supported by Ford Foundation. So the program used cross-cultural religious literacy as basic resources to build a community among the religious communities in some areas. The target of group are in 5 areas: Yogyakarta, Banjarmasin, Bali, Kupang, and Ambon. The communities come from one place of worship, so not representative from organization, but representative from the communities. Most of them had never even participated in the interfaith activities before. So the program started with the community leaders workshop, forming community note in the communities, online seminar about the cross-cultural religious literacy, 2-day workshop in the training about cultural religious literacy, and so these additional issues that we put in our process, Resolution 1819 of Human Rights Council. Why this resolution include? Because sometimes we use the resolution to convince Muslim communities to shift their paradigm about the blasphemy law at the resolution, at the UN resolution, to combating intolerance perspective that stated or mentioned in this resolution. And the last one, carry out some activities in the grassroots by the participant. So there is a very simple activities. We only ask the participant, from the young participant, even the elder participant, to like create a place of worship. But we should show to them actually we can collaborate, because one of the target of cross-cultural religious literacy is the competence of collaboration, and so that with the drawing and develop a place of worship, they can cooperate each other and achieve their own purpose, or objective. So the challenge, I think I can skip the process, because mostly there is a suspicion or rejection from the participant in the first step, but lastly they have a good response. I will read the result for the last presentation. There is significant change from the pre-test, with only 19% to 39% regarding the need for the clarification of suspicion on the part of adherent to others' religion. This means that there is a change in decreased suspicion on the others. The second, there was an increase from the pre-test, 66 to 77, that everyone has the right to worship and express their religion belief, as long as it does not harm the other religion. And the third one, this is mostly about the gender perspective, because we include also gender perspective in the training. And the last one, more participants choose the highest level of tolerance, namely understanding, accepting, accommodating, cooperating, helping parties of different belief or religion, from 85% to 91%. This means that CCRL program with an approach to religious community notes has success in increased tolerance and reducing suspicion among the participants. I thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone, and of course, aloha. It is good to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you to Brett Sharps. Good to meet you last night personally, and to the leadership of BYU and the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. Thank you for inviting me here. My topic, I entitled my topic is breaking violence through the breaking of bread. It'll be a, I'm just gonna take you through some initiatives that we've had at the Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches, and also at the Center for the Study of Christian-Muslim Relations. Thank you. That's Interfaith at Work. Okay, so let's carry on. I'd just like to begin with an experience I've had when I was still a student, taking my Master's of Divinity. And during the time we were sharing, to street dwellers, and one of those groups was the Bajau Muslims. It's the poorest Muslim tribe in the Philippines. And so when we were sharing the gospel to them, I was only at the level of just, being a benefactor, just sharing, and then giving them food, bringing them to the hospital, when some of their babies are sick. And then one conversation I've had with a member of the tribe was with a young man called Micah, who became my friend. And I was asking him why they preferred to dwell in the streets, because they said they like to dwell in the streets. And so I said, why would you like that? And he said, it's better for us to be in the streets where it's relatively safe, because if they go home in southern Philippines, they'd be persecuted by their own Muslim tribes. Because there's an intra-violence, also intra-conflict within the different Muslim tribes, and they are the least powerful. And so not only are Christians persecuting them, but even from among the different Muslim tribes in southern Philippines. So that opened my eyes. It was an eye-opening experience for me that poverty, human dignity, or the loss of it is not simply the result of being poor, but there are causes. And some of them are social, political, religious, of course. So that began my journey to studying more and, trying to do more for uplifting the human dignity. And as I am very blessed to learn here at BYU, religious freedom and human dignity is for all. Just a glance at the marginalization that not only the Bajau Muslim tribe experienced, but the Muslims in the Philippines experience generally, because as you know, Philippines is a majority Christian country. And so let me just read here a few details why they are marginalized. So the Muslims have been under colonization since 16th century. And the colonization was motivated by economic, political, religious, and military reasons. And one of the lasting legacies of colonization was the division of the Philippines into two main factions. The native Filipinos were divided into Muslims and non-Muslims. So many Filipinos are here, I am very glad. And you know that Philippines is very regionalistic. So Muslims, then among the Christians, it would be those from Mindanao, the south, and then the north, and then central, the central Philippines. And these are very regionalistic. The division is just so pronounced, especially right now with the political situation brewing up. But you'd see here that one of the effects of colonization was the marginalization of the Muslims in terms of political rights, economic rights, so that, for example, in 1913, 98% of Mindanao's populations were Muslims, and they owned most of the lands. But by 1990, the Muslim population was already 19%, and 17% of them only owned most of the lands in Mindanao. So you could imagine the dissatisfaction of the Filipino Muslims, because most of the lands were taken over by Filipino Christians. Okay, so I'll just for context, the contemporary Moro rebellion, if you know about the MILF, MNLF, those two main factions, the revolutionary groups in the Philippines, this rebellion, the contemporary rebellion, ceased basically in 2019 when the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao was established. And hopefully the establishment of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao would bring a close to more than 300 years of conflict between the Muslim Filipinos and the Christian-dominated government of the Philippines. Of course, I'm not saying that religion is the only factor, but religion is certainly a factor, one of the key factors of the conflict. Okay, having said that, for me, peacemaking is, or should be, at least for me as an evangelical Christian, I am very strong in basing it on a biblical theological basis. I remember one friend asking me, why am I doing peacemaking, and what, am I coming from a certain ideology? That was coming from an invitation to be part of a communist-related group. And I said, I don't need a Marxist ideology. I'm basing it on the Bible. So, and for me, the significance of the Lord's Supper or the Eucharist is very important as a paradigm for peacemaking. And I'm going to read here a quote from John de Grucci, and if you know, he's one of the primary peacemakers in South Africa. And he said, the significance of the table as a space around which the new community meets and is formed points beyond the liturgy of the upper room to the family meal, the sharing of goods with the poor, and the round table of political negotiation. If I only have another hour to explain more about the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper's significance, but what I'm saying is that the Lord's Supper is more than just a individualistic ritual, which is often seen by many evangelicals, is that it's only a relationship between me and God about forgiveness of sins, but it doesn't have anything to do with other social, political issues, marginalization. But that is, when we dig deeper into the significance of the Lord's Supper, it's more than that. So, for example, in 1 Corinthians 11:20, this is an example of how Paul addressed a marginalization within the church. And he used the Lord's Supper as a paradigm. So he said in 1 Corinthians 11, when you come together, it is not the Lord's Supper you eat, for when you are eating, some of you go ahead with your own private suppers. As a result, one person remains hungry and another gets drunk. And he used the Lord's Supper as a model of how not to do or how not to marginalize other people, especially the poor, at least in this context. So I am contending that there's an urgent need to recover the Passover roots of the Lord's Supper, especially the call to love the stranger. For example, in Leviticus 19:33-34, it says, when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. The stranger who sojourns with you shall be to you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And this is a central theme of the Lord's Supper, which has been forgotten, I think, by many, so that even the love of strangers. So when we do the ritual, the Lord's Supper ritual, and I think rituals are so powerful that we inculcate values when we do it weekly or maybe monthly or however often you do it. But if we just inculcate something like an individualistic perspective in the Lord's Supper, which is, for me, the most important ritual that the Lord Jesus left us, then you can just imagine how Christians would address social political issues like marginalization. So, a quote from Douglas Meeks, he says, at the Lord's table, Jesus invites the ecclesia, a community of faith that begins with Jesus looking into the face of the shamed and calls them out of shame, isolation, and hiddenness into communication, communion, and recognition. Jesus gives them faces, the gift of life. So, having said that, as a theological grounding for peacemaking, let me share some initiatives that we've had that I say, for me it's which exemplify what the Lord's Supper calls us to do. So, number one, peacemaking is being with. It requires being with. It can take the form of dialogue, which is similar to dining together, or salo-salo. To my Filipino colleagues here, salo-salo, it's dining together, eating together. And dialogue is one theologian wrote about it. Eating is not simply eating food. It's about sharing yourself. It's just opening yourself in dialogue. You partake of each other, as it were, and knowing more about one another, so that the fiesta, there's a cultural dining together in the Philippines where, the homes are opened. You can enter whenever you want because there's food there. This is sort of a practice that has, I think, very few now practices it because of theft and, other situations. But it's a part of our culture. And peacemaking must seek to humanize and not to instrumentalize relationships by eating together, laughing together, and mourning together. And another thing that I've learned in doing peacemaking is that it may create conflict, even coming from fellow believers, requiring intra-faith peacemaking. So, for example, one of the dining together that we did, and so I joined the Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches and the Center for the Study of Christian-Muslim Relations in 2015. And one of the things we did first was to have dialogue with grassroots leaders of Muslims. Because, 3 minutes and let me just go on. Okay. So this is another example of that, trying to build unity among, these are grassroots leaders of the Muslims. And so in 2016, when Congress failed to pass the bill that would create autonomous region, evangelical leaders, I included, we visited and lamented with top leaders of the Muslim community, they're now in power in the autonomous region. But when it failed to pass the bill, we went there and we lamented with them. We really tried to comfort them because it was a big blow. And as you see here, these are the evangelical bishops. I was there with our national director, and the one wearing white is the head of the Muslim Revolutionary Group, became the chief minister, and now campaign again to be a chief minister of the region. And lamenting with them was, it's very crucial for us. When this city was bombed by the government in 2017, and so you can see that's the biggest mosque in Marawi. And less than a year, we visited it. We lamented again with the Muslims. And as you can see, the bullet holes just riddled the mosque. We were there. And as I'm saying here, in healing conflicts, an ethic of deep compassion is crucial. We call it malasakit in Tagalog. Malasakit meaning to look intently at the pain of others. That is the opposite of looking away at what others are feeling. So this is the city that was bombed by the government during the war. And malasakit also means, deep compassion means defending, advocating for the rights of our Muslim brothers and sisters. So we advocated for the return of the refugees, we call them bakwit, the evacuees, those who have lost their homes. And I remember my friends who are professional Muslims calling me on the phone and saying, "Hey, Aldrin, we don't have anywhere to sleep." I was in Manila because I'm not based in Mindanao. And he said, the hotels don't accept us because we're Muslims. And so when I heard that, it just broke my heart because, they're in need during the time. And so many of them slept in their cars, on the side of the roads. And so, it also includes, Eucharistic peacemaking includes seeking forgiveness. So here we invited one of the top theological leaders of the Muslim community. And during this time, and here we can see Bishop F. Tendero, it is our group, international group from Southeast Asia. We prayed for him, and we sought his forgiveness. And when after that, I took him home, and in the car he said to me, the Muslim leader said, Aldrin, this is the first time that a Christian, group prayed for me and sought our forgiveness. And sought forgiveness from what happened. And, just again, broke my heart. And here, in one of the biggest Muslim gatherings, I was, included the president of the Philippines in the top Christian Muslim leaders. I was invited to give a speech, and again, asking forgiveness from our Muslim community was a key part of my message. So this was the rally, and again, seeking forgiveness requires acknowledging the faults of our ancestors, the mistakes of the past, and the deficiencies of our Christian tradition, not defending them. Christian tradition has so many, Christianity has so many lapses in terms of dealing with the strangers, the aliens, the widows, and orphans, the others, and it is hard to just, defend them. So we need to really repent of that. And I'll just go. That relationship led to formal negotiations, led to formal agreements with the top Muslim leaders, and this was a me signing for our evangelical group to have peacemaking as a formal cooperation between their group and the evangelical leaders and other religious leaders in the Philippines. And here, of course, I don't want to forget this, because Elder Adams, who became a good friend, and Elder Johnson and Elder Grimshaw, maybe you know them from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They were with us for, when they were there, because they had to go home later on, but they were part of our interfaith peacemaking group. And here, with the top Muslim authority, religious leader, the Grand Mufti of the Bangsamoro, Abu Huraira, Elder Adams also was involved. But finally, let me just, because I know it's already my time, but peacemaking means also sharing your goods. So when the evacuees of the Muslims, the Muslim evacuees left their homes, we went to them and we delivered goods. In this case, we evangelicals gave, I think, goods for 1,000 families. And we also built homes for them. We built 120 houses for them, and then we allowed the administration to be taken over. The Muslims are the ones administering it. Even up to now, Muslims are living there. So this is, example of the houses. And it's really good, it's not you can really live in these houses. So finally, it's a continuing journey. We had a renewal of commitment for peacemaking. We signed another agreement in 2023, and I was invited to be the convener for evangelicals for the formation of the Mindanao Religious Conference, which was formed last year. So thank you. Blessed are the peacemakers. Shukran.
All right, well, welcome. Good afternoon and aloha. It's good to see you, and I'm glad to be here. I want to say, as everyone else has as well, thank you so much to the folks who have organized this. Deeply grateful to be invited and to be able to be a part. Really appreciate BYU hosting. And in particular, how about the fantastic students who have done an incredible job all week long caring for us. So thank you to them. We're really grateful for that. What I want to talk about today is peace building and the organization that I work for, the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network. Specifically, how can we reframe multi-faith engagement that could lead to lasting, holistic, impactful transformation? At its heart, our mission as an organization is not about tolerance, it's not about coexistence, rather it's about relationships, building substantive relationships, authentic relationships between people of deep difference that leads to transformation, the kind of transformation that has the ability to sustain, has the ability to help heal, and can unite us even in the midst of deep difference. And yet, for that kind of transformation to take root, we have to reframe how we understand and approach multi-faith engagement. We are convinced that many classic forms of interfaith or multi-faith engagement between people of different religious convictions have failed in their aspirational goals. For too long, our methods have been very shallow. We've avoided differences in favor of being polite to one another, or we have amplified differences in an attempt to be combative with one another, and we've challenged one another in ways that fracture rather than build trust. So what if there's a better way? What if there is a way that is deeply relational, theologically honest, rooted in human dignity, and expressed or lived out in human service? This is exactly the kind of model that we would propose and that we're trying to engage in as we do this work both in the U.S. and around the world. So I want to share kind of this vision with you this afternoon. First, I want to start with the idea of relational engagement as the new model for pluralism. Let's begin by reframing the way we engage across various faith traditions. So much of our public discourse when it comes to the topic of religion or religious differences is structured around confrontation. I would argue that many of us have been trained in a model, we've inherited a model that ultimately says, I'm right, you're wrong, sit down, be quiet while I tell you why that is. The goal, it seems, is often not to understand one another or even to persuade one another, but rather to win arguments. And I think winning an argument can feel good in a debate setting. The truth is, it's not how most of our lives are actually influenced. I'm convinced that you can win arguments or you can win friends, you can win hearts, but you can rarely do both. Think about how a parent shapes their child's values. There are certainly moments in a parent and child's life where a parent has to firmly command and expect obedience. They have authority and they're able to express that authority, and in doing so, they can expect that their children are going to obey. But the truth of the matter is, lasting transformation rarely happens in a child's life through coercion. The child may do what the parent asks them to do, but almost never does a parent say, do it because I said so, and the child says, in response, my heart is warmed to your opinion, Mom and Dad. Of course it's going to be my pleasure to go do that. No, they do it, but they grumble, and in fact, often their heart is hardened toward the parent's position. Coercion is not a good model. Most positive life change happens in the context of relationship, affection, and trust. And affection and trust and relationship happens as children watch their parents who are visibly, demonstrably loving them, and as these loving parents behave in various ways with their children. It's not the demand for compliance that changes the child's heart. It's the loving example, the consistent presence, the patient listening, and the gentle guidance that shapes who the child becomes. And so we would propose a new model for pluralism, a model built on the idea of relational engagement. The approach begins not with arguments, but with friendships, not with theological fencing, but as my brother just mentioned, with coffee tables and shared meals. The persuasion that happens in this way happens most powerfully, not in moments of aggressive confrontation, but over time in the soil of authentic human relationships. Secondly, the priority of theological conviction. I want to be very clear at this point. This relational model is not one that asks us to water down what we believe or to sacrifice theological conviction. In fact, the opposite is true. We believe that this model frees us to express theological conviction without fearing that it will cause the end of relationships. Too often, multi-faith work or interfaith work rotates around this unspoken rule that says, let's avoid the hard stuff. Let's not talk about what we actually believe. The fear, of course, is if we actually talk about the ways in which we believe differently, that this deep conviction might result in deep division. So instead, we skate along the surface, focusing on commonalities, hiding our differences. We say things like, fundamentally, we're all kind of the same. And it's true that we have a lot of commonality. But when we use that as the primary trajectory of our relationships, we inhibit or diminish the theological distinctives, the convictions that make us who we are. And that's ultimately the problem with this approach. If I'm not allowed to bring my full, authentic self to the table, if I can't bring Micah with all of my various peculiarities, and there are many of them, and my particular convictions, and I have many of those as well. I'm an evangelical Christian, and so there are many in here in this room who are going to profoundly disagree with me at points of my theology. But if I'm not allowed to bring all of that into the room, then I'm not really in a relationship. I'm just playing a role. If we all do that, we end up with a hollow kind of unity, one that cannot endure when disagreement arises. Most importantly, as an organization, we are not interested in people who say they love interfaith or people who say they love multi-faith. I was leading an event in Chicago a few months ago, and I had a man come up to me from a particular religious tradition, and he said, I love multi-faith. I think multi-faith is the new religion. And I said, brother, I'm thankful for you, and I hope you enjoy our event, and I hope you're involved in it, but you are not who we're looking for. We're not interested in people who are passionate about interfaith and multi-faith. We're interested in people who are passionate about their faith and who believe their particular faith motivates them to engage with people out of deep theological personal convictions. I want to be friends with people who believe vastly different things than I do. I want to defend your rights to believe differently than I do, but all of my commitment to do those things is rooted in my particular theological convictions. And so people who are so committed to their belief system that they want to live it out not just within the walls of their community, but across the world, serving, loving, dialoguing with those who believe differently, these are the people we want to walk with. Why? Because this is what makes relationships real. When I know where you really stand, and when you know where I truly stand, and we can choose to walk together anyway, that is a relationship of substance. The third thing I want to talk about is the idea of dignity as the grounds for unity. If we're not building unity on theological agreement, then how are we going to build unity? And this is incredibly important. I've got an article about this coming out next week, as a matter of fact. I think we have to shift our grounds for collaboration. We often bring people together and we say things like, well, we have some differences, but mostly we believe the same thing, and we try and unite people together around common belief. Instead, I want to argue that we need to unite people together around a common conviction that every person has dignity, worth, and value. And that dignity is the grounds for our unity, the inherent, God-given, unshakable worth of every human being. As an evangelical Christian, my understanding of human dignity is grounded in my theological conviction that every person is created in the image of God. The other Christians in the room, any Jewish friends, would echo that same sort of conviction. My Muslim friends don't share that same theological belief, but they do believe that every person was created by God, distinct, and that all of them are blessed by God. And so we may get at it from different theological perspectives, but we can all affirm the idea that every person has dignity, worth, and value. And this is incredibly important, that the dignity, worth, and value of every person is not tied to belief or practice. And so when we come up face to face with the idea that I believe something very different than you, it doesn't sever our relationship. It piques our curiosity. In fact, in the words of the great theologian and philosopher Ted Lasso, we ought to be people who are curious, not judgmental. That gets a laugh in a room where that's not full of academics. But anyway, we want to be people who are curious about the other. Not to the extent where we have to affirm or agree with everything everybody else believes, but where we're interested in the other. And so you may not share my particular theology, but we do share this idea that every person has inherent worth. We may disagree, and we may strongly disagree on matters of theology, ethics, salvation, truth. But if we begin with the conviction that every person is created with dignity, worth, and value, then we have a foundation that can last beyond intense disagreement. It means I don't have to compromise what I believe in order to love you well. I can affirm the value of your life, your voice, your presence, your contributions, not because we see eye to eye on theology or doctrine, but because you are human and you have value that's not dependent on your belief or practice, and that alone is enough. Beyond that, it doesn't mean that I have to accept what you believe is true, and you don't have to accept what I believe is true. Rather, exclusivity is not in competition with this understanding of engagement. And the truth is, there are many people in the room who come from various theological traditions who may believe some various form or version of exclusivity when it comes to their religious truth claims. Exclusivity is not in competition with this particular model of engagement. Instead, we recognize that we can remain convictional and embrace a model where dignity is the grounds for why we love and can collaborate together with one another. In a world that increasingly demands sameness for unity, this is a radical alternative. We live in a time where cancel culture is the prominent sort of framework for how people think about the people who disagree with them. And it's not preserved just by the right or the left, it's owned by both of them. Either be like me or I don't want anything to do with you. This is a different alternative, an extremely different alternative. And what we would say is that relationships are possible without uniformity. Deep love is possible without agreement. Partnership is possible without compromise. And anecdotally, if I can add, anybody in the room who's ever had children knows that this is true. You can profoundly disagree and still love them deeply. This is the way we relate to one another. This doesn't mean that our differences disappear. Rather, they remain, and we do not minimize them, but we insist that they don't diminish our commitment to one another's dignity. Fourth, transparent conversations have to become a staple of our relationships. Of course, if we're serious about dignity, we have to be serious about honesty. Surface-level relationships cannot bear the weight of disagreement. They crack under pressure. But relationships that are rooted in affection and trust can weather storms. That's why transparent conversation is not a feature of this model. It's a non-negotiable foundation. Real conversations, the ones that change us, are not scripted. They are messy, they are vulnerable, they are brave, but they're also rare because they require something that's in short supply, and that is trust. I get so frustrated with so many, the majority that I have seen, of interfaith dialogues, because they often place people together in the same space who do not know one another to make competing arguments about the other. And if we're going to sit in a space with people who we have disagreements with, we have to begin from a position of loving and trusting the other so that we can assume the best of one another. It's difficult, if not impossible, to have productive, substantive dialogue until we precede that dialogue with substantive relationships. Trust is not built by clever arguments or carefully crafted posts, but rather by time together, by presence and consistency and shared experiences. It's only then that we can assume the best of each other's arguments rather than the worst. It's only then that we can interpret disagreement as sincere and not hostile. It's only then when we can have conversations that we don't expect agreement as an end goal, but where we do expect one another to listen well, speak honestly, and affirm each other's worth, even as we challenge each other's views. Can we hear disagreement and still choose to honor one another? Can we say, I believe you are wrong on some things that matter deeply to me, and I still am committed to your good? This is the kind of maturity we're looking for. Finally, let me talk about service as a means to relationship. Many models of engagement start with the head, move to the heart, and end with the hands. First we think, then we feel, finally we act. In our work, we've seen that transformation often happens in the reverse order. It starts with our hands, with doing something together. When Christians and Muslims and Jews show up to serve together, things begin to shift. We begin to see each other not just as abstract opponents, but rather as fellow humans, as neighbors, as partners in love and service. Most of all, we see each other as friends. And from service comes affection. The heart begins to warm toward the other, and eventually the head follows. We begin to think differently about one another. Our categories are disrupted. Our assumptions are challenged. Our theology is refined, not compromised, but sharpened by the presence of each other. And ultimately, we can have hard conversations that we often avoid because we know and trust one another. I can confirm in my own life, the most powerful theological conversations I've had over the last 5 years that I've helped lead this organization have come between myself and people who are not evangelical Christians. By far, every single one of them has been between me and someone who's not an evangelical. It's only when I love and trust you that I'm able to converse with you. So we start with action, leading to relationship. As I close, where does this leave us? We stand at a cultural moment marked with polarization, suspicion, and fear, but we also stand at the edge of the opportunity. I'm so profoundly convinced of this. There's so many of us that fear at the moment we're in. I don't think we have to fear it. I think this room has the answer for a lot of the moment we're in. I think we stand on the precipice of opportunity. So we have the opportunity to reimagine how people of religious conviction can relate to one another. Something that goes deeper than tolerance, stronger than agreement, a network of neighbors. A movement of people who say, I'll not pretend that our differences don't matter, they do, but I will not let them define the limits of our relationship. I will bring my whole self, I'll honor your whole self, and I will walk with you in truth, in love, and in service because your dignity demands nothing less. This is the kind of multi-faith engagement the world is longing for. This is the kind of peace building we're working toward. Hear me when I say this, peace is possible. May it be so for all of us. Thank you.
Sure.
While he's getting ready, we're the last ones. Aloha.
Aloha.
Come on, we're the last ones. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you.
And good afternoon. And yes, the last speakers in the last session. Do we still have you? I hope so. It is a privilege to be here. Thank you to the organizers for including us. It's a privilege to be here with my wife 44 years ago. Today we were here on our honeymoon. Wow. And so, in fact, thank you. I remember lying on the beach in Waikiki reading a book about the Holocaust on my honeymoon. So the interest in human rights goes back a long time. We're with the Geneva Office for Human Rights Education. And before we were that, I was on the faculty at Brigham Young University in Provo. And before that, for a stint, for a couple of years, I actually worked for the United Nations in Geneva. Now, here we go. Here's the United Nations where the world focuses on peace. I had the opportunity in that capacity to see the United Nations do some good. And for all the skeptics out there, yes, the United Nations does some good. But I also had the opportunity to see some of the failures that have been talked about in the last couple of days. And I'm not going to go into a lot of theory today. It's just, you've laid out the theory. Most of you already know it. The background, the groundwork. We'll give you just enough to give the context of what we do. I want to say I'm inspired by these brothers and sisters that I'm sitting with on the podium today who are doing things, who are taking the theory, turning it into some kind of practice. It's what we try to do. We're engaging not just across religions, but across nations, cultures, civilizations, the kind of thing that we're trying to do, but grounded in our own faith. So, United Nations, for all of its problems and failures, when I used to teach this, my students would often say, why doesn't the United Nations reform itself? And I would say, well, it needs reform, but that bad news is also the good news. The reason it doesn't reform itself is because things aren't bad enough yet. The only reason we have a United Nations is because the world came out of the worst catastrophe it had ever experienced in the Second World War. These are just to give you that gut reaction when you look at the number of deaths, including 45 million civilians, including the Holocaust, including the dropping of atom bombs on Japan. The horrors were too great. And so the world came together at Nuremberg and in Tokyo, and they tried to apply the rule of law to what they had just seen, and they said, never again. And as a result, the principles that were laid out there turned into the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These institutions were meant to instill in all of us such a sense of the dignity of other human beings, something that does cut across religions and civilizations, that we wouldn't find ourselves in these kinds of problems, in these issues as we had before. Human dignity, just look at the preamble, an extract from that in Article 1 in the Universal Declaration. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. If we believe that, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed by someone, with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. And yet, for all of that, there has been no shortage of war, genocides, mass violations of human rights since the UDHR was adopted. So what's the problem? Well, the problem, it begins with dehumanization. That was spoken of I think, yesterday by Professor Aldrin from Singapore. Others have made reference to the dehumanization process that begins when we see others as less than human, less than equal, as some other kind of entity not deserving of the same kind of respect that our own would deserve. And the response to dehumanization, from our view, needs to be a delegitimization of those forces that cause the dehumanization. So there have been examples in history where major bad things have been delegitimized. Privateering used to be government-sanctioned piracy, used to be government-sanctioned slavery, everything from Nazi fascism to Stalinist communism, Soviet-style communism. These things have been delegitimized. So how do we rehumanize, or how do we humanize where it's still in process? Well, for us, it begins with individuals, it begins with children. I hope you're going to be able to hear this. We'll make sure you understand what the point is, regardless.
These two second graders teaching us all a powerful lesson, our persons of the week. Tonight, the powerful moment and the lesson on the playground. Mason and Amira are second graders at Mann Elementary School in Philadelphia. Amira believed she'd been bullied. She heard someone talking about her, picking on her, and Mason with moving words for her. Just listen.
Don't listen to a guy that calls you dumb. Listen to yourself. Ignore this guy, whoever it is. Just stop talking to people that calls you dumb.
Tell her what she is.
You are smart. You're smart. You're such a nice friend.
Such a nice friend, she says. Mason is just 7, so is Amira. Mason taking Amira's hand.
Do you want to go play with him? Go ahead.
Okay.
A lot of what we do in second grade is talking about finding forgiveness in our hearts, and I think it meant a lot more to her that it was coming from him, her peer, than it did when I was saying it to her.
And right here tonight, those two 7-year-olds, Mason and Amira.
I want to help people, not be mean to people. No. It made me feel happy and warm inside. If someone's being mean to you, that can really hurt your feelings, and it did. But Mason helped me.
And so we choose Mason and Amira. Don't listen to him, listen to yourself, he said.
So I'm still touched by that when I see that. There are role models as to what we want to see happen as children understand their worth, their value, their human rights and responsibilities. I love this thought from Thomas as professor of psychiatry. Every act of conscious learning requires the willingness to suffer an injury to one's self-esteem. That is why young children, before they are aware of their own self-importance, learn so easily, and why older persons, especially if vain or important, cannot learn at all. Hopefully that doesn't mean we can't learn it all in this room, but it does say something for the children of this world.
We love this quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places close to home. So close and so small they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerned citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. And this is the child's world. Friends, parents, brothers and sisters, teachers, neighbors. The world of the child is where we want them to experience self-worth and esteem.
The mandate comes from Universal Declaration of Human Rights, obviously not legally enforceable, but the seed was sowed there. Every individual and every organ of society shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms. There have been other international documents, conventions, and covenants that have made this more enforceable, more mandatory. And our mission, we'll explain what COLEGI is, but Geneva Office for Human Rights Education is to teach children and youth about human rights, about their individual worth, while fostering a culture that values human dignity. So who are we? Well, we originated in Geneva about 8 years ago. We had colleagues who were both academics and human rights advocates who looked around at the human rights education programs, realized that many of them left out some vital components, including religious freedom, freedom or belief. Many of them were also dealing more with older university students and not reaching the children and the youth secondary schools. So started in Geneva. We created over time a curriculum, and we now have offices in Geneva, Philippines, Africa, Central and South America, Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, United States, and we're expanding rapidly. We're affiliated with the David M. Kennedy Center for International Studies at Brigham Young University in Provo. We receive a lot of our support from the humanitarian funds of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Our curriculum promotes human dignity through teaching children and youth about human rights and their responsibilities.
Based on the Convention of the Rights of the Child as well as Universal Declaration.
Our vision, like many or all of you here, is to build bridges. Collega means friend, colleague, and the symbol, the logo there is children with their books learning together about their human rights. Our curriculum is designed to help teach human rights positively and influences their self-esteem, attitudes, and behaviors. I love to talk about these. I wish I had an hour to talk about the lessons. There's more than just 10 articles in the UDHR, there's 30. But these 10 really have to do with the world of a child. And every country that we introduce, all the educators, administrators seem to be so drawn to lesson 4, how to reduce bullying, how to help children get along with each other. And they love this lesson. It teaches children how to be an upstander, not a bystander, and to find healthy ways of resolving conflicts. Words make a difference. Child labor and the opportunity to go to school. These are very important in the life of a child.
With distinctions between, for example, child labor and doing chores to help the parents, or we've seen reductions in bullying in schools where they've actually been able to measure it.
The very foundation, the first lesson, and throughout the curriculum, we use what's known as a talking stick. And you see on the right there a Native American talking stick. And the point is, when you have the talking stick, you have the opportunity to speak and everyone will listen to you. This man in the other side is from Fiji, shop teacher, and he made some pretty significant talking sticks there. They're quite large. But we love that even reserved, shy children, when they have the talking stick, they have the opportunity to be listened to.
The method reinforces the message. When the child has the stick, they talk. They do activities, they do games, they do music, all of these things that reinforce the message. In fact, we went into one African government. They said, we already teach human rights. We said, well, okay, can we show you this anyway? And they said, well, they watched it and they said, we stand up there and lecture to our children and watch them fall asleep. We don't have this. We would like to integrate this somehow into what we already do.
Every lesson has a homework challenge. And we know that the minds and the hearts of children are a sacred space. Every parent wants to teach their own children their values. And so our homework is to involve families, to talk about, go home, make a new friend, find someone who has a different belief and explain carefully, listen carefully, and practice doing kind things for someone in your family. These are the kind of active homework challenges. We have manuals in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese.
So these are some of the countries, I'm going to go through this very quickly, where we're very active. The Philippines government has actually formally and officially adopted this program nationwide. Guatemala has also just signed an agreement with us to use this throughout the country. These things take months and years sometimes to get to that point. Making great strides in Fiji and Ghana. These are countries where we've either got the thing going or have made some real progress. So this is an important slide. This kind of sums up things. What do we bring? Human rights education that's simple, directed at youth and children, interactive, inexpensive. We provide the initial training materials and the initial training. It's non-sectarian and apolitical, does not work on the fringes. It's adaptable to any country, any culture. It focuses on the fundamental rights that everybody agrees in, every religion, even non-religious people. It's respectful of parents. We try to engage them and local cultures. I've said that. Has the importance of freedom of religion or belief as a basic assumption. Ultimately, it will be implemented and managed by the host countries. We don't go into the classrooms. We just have help with the training. And so it's sustainable. We're not going to be able to listen to all of this, but here's one of the students from Ghana after her experience.
You have the right to seek, receive, and share information in all forms, as long as the information being shared is not damaging to you or to anybody.
So you get the point. She started to figure it out. Our founder of our faith said at the time when our church was at the lowest level of persecution, or maybe I'd say the highest, the worst persecution we'd experienced, among other things, penned these words: we should waste and wear out our lives in bringing to the light all the hidden things of darkness. We believe that human rights education does that. So, okay, I'm not hearing any. Philippines. Human rights education brings light to darkness by delegitimizing powers in the world that are prejudicial, dehumanizing, and destructive. Last slide. I am a person. I am me. I am a value. I am me. I am me. I am me. I have a right to be accepted everywhere. As a person, I have a name. I have a name. I have a name. Thank you very much. Encourage you to look at our website if you get a chance.